Dear students, in this video you'll find all the chapters of the first flight book of class 10th. So watch it till the end so that you are able to revise your syllabus in a jiffy. Dear students, in this video I'm going to give you a brief summary of the first chapter of the first flight book, that is, A Letter to God. This chapter has been written by G.L. Funtis, and it is about a gullible and hard-working farmer whose name is Lancho. His house was situated on the top of a hill and he could see his fields from there. He expected a good crop. The fields only needed some showers, so he was hopeful for some rain. During his meal one night, it began to rain. Lencho was overjoyed. He went out to feel the pleasure of rain and he could see the droplets turning into coins. But suddenly a strong wind came and large hailstones began to fall. It hailed for an hour and the whole field turned to white. The corn was brutally destroyed. Lencho told his family that they would go hungry that year. There was no one who could help them. All through the night, Lencho thought of only one hope, and that was the help of God. Lencho believed that God's eyes saw everything and he would not let them die of hunger. The following Sunday, he wrote a letter to God, and in the letter he wrote, "God, if you don't help me, my family and I will go hungry this year. I needed just 100 pesos for survival." On the envelope, he just wrote to God. He put the letter inside the envelope and went to town. At the post office, he placed a stamp on the letter and dropped it into the letterbox. A postman showed the letter written to God to the postmaster. The postmaster was an amiable man and he laughed loudly and opened the letter. He appreciated the writer for keeping an extraordinary confidence in God. In order not to shake the writer's faith in God, the postmaster decided to answer the letter. The writer had asked for 100 pesos. Since it was impossible for the postmaster to contribute 100 pesos all by himself, he asked for money from his employees and he also asked help from his friends. At the same time, he himself gave a part of his salary. He put all the contributed money in an envelope and addressed it to Lencho. He put the signature of God. The following Sunday, Lencho received the letter. When Lencho counted the money, he became angry because the money was only 70 pesos. He wrote another letter to God to send him the rest of the amount. At the same time, he requested God not to send it to him by mail because he thought that the post office employees were a bunch of crooks. The story conveys the message that a person's faith can turn mountains. Lencho's faith in God enabled him to get help from the postmaster. Dear students, in today's video, I'll be explaining lesson 2 from the first flight book of class 10th. The title of the chapter is Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. This chapter is an extract from the autobiography of Nelson Mandela. Here, he shares a few of his bitter experiences during his struggle against apartheid. Apartheid means a policy that is based on racial discrimination. As we start reading the chapter, it takes us back to May 10th of the year 1994, when Nelson Mandela became the first black president of democratic South Africa. He tells us that the morning of this historic day was bright and clear. For past few days, he had been surrounded with world leaders and dignitaries. Dignitaries are people who hold high ranks. They were coming to felicitate him. The inauguration ceremony was to be held, and this ceremony would have the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. This ceremony was to be held in the amphitheater made of sandstone in Pretoria. This place had been the seat of white supremacy for decades. But today, this place was flooded with people of varied colors and races from all over the world. Nelson Mandela calls 10th May that lovely autumn day because this day saw the fall of a system of governance based on race and creed. Just as the trees shed their old and worn out leaves in autumn, the oppressive policies practiced in South Africa were shed, making space for a new and fresh, democratic, non-racial government. Nelson Mandela was accompanied by his daughter Zenani, and his swearing in was preceded by that of Mr. de Klerk as the second deputy president and Mr. Thabo Mbeki as the first deputy president. Nelson Mandela pledged to obey and hold the constitution of his republic. In his inaugural speech, he expressed his gratitude to all the dignitaries for having participated in this common victory for justice, peace, and human dignity. He further added that they had achieved political emancipation and were now taking the pledge to free all their people from the shackles of poverty, suffering, deprivation, gender, and other types of discrimination. He closed his address with a wish that freedom reigns and Africa be blessed by God. An impressive display of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers added to the spectrum of the inauguration ceremony. Mandela termed it as an exhibition of military loyalty to the newly formed democratic government. When saluted by the military generals, Mandela pointed out the shift in their attitude. These decorated officers who had just saluted him would have arrested him not many years ago. Mandela also recalled the historical events that had marked the growth of apartheid in South Africa. The Boer War and the first decade of the 20th century had witnessed the spreading of the system of racism and dominance of the blacks by the whites. However, in the last decade of the century, all this had been overturned and South Africans enjoyed equal rights and freedom, irrespective of the color of their skin. Mandela also recognized the sacrifices made by thousands of people before him who had suffered hardships because they were patriots. He shared that his people were his greater wealth than the minerals and gems found in his country. He had learned that courage was not the absence of fear but the triumph over it. Another observation that Mandela shared was the belief that hatred is not natural to men. If a man can learn to hate another, he can also be taught to love. He recounted the days of oppression that he had undergone during his long imprisonment as a freedom fighter. He shared that even at the most critical time, he saw a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards. This helped to keep alive his faith that man's goodness is a flame that can never be extinguished. Mandela remarked that every individual has twin obligations. One duty is to his family and friends, and the other to his community and country. Every man fulfills both these obligations according to his circumstances and abilities. But tragically, in his country, if any black-colored man like him tried to fulfill these obligations, he was punished and isolated. As a child, he did not understand the meaning of freedom because he enjoyed life freely. He later realized that this boyhood freedom was an illusion. He observed that this freedom had been curtailed for all those who were like him. It was at this stage that he joined the African National Congress, which drew him into the struggle for a general freedom for his countrymen. In the end, Mandela says that he considers both the oppressors and oppressed to be prisoners. The oppressed is a prisoner because he undergoes physical torture, and the oppressor because he is bound by hatred. He very rightly sums up by saying that the oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. So the chapter that I've taken up today is from the first flight book of class 10th, and the chapter is 2 stories about flying. This chapter has 2 parts. In this video, I'll take the first part, and the title of first part is His First Flight. This story has been written by Liam O'Flaherty. So in this story, we'll see how a seagull learns to take his first flight. His 2 brothers and sister had already learned how to fly by imitating their parents. They had simply run to the brink of the ledge, flapped off their wings and flown away. But when the young seagull came to the brink and tried to fly in the air, he became afraid. He felt sure that if he tried to fly, he would fall into the sea below. He believed that his wings would not support him. So he ran back to his hole under the ledge. His parents came to him, but he refused to fly. They threatened that he would starve on the ledge, but he refused to fly. 24 hours had passed since then. The young seagull had not eaten anything. He began to feel very hungry. So he came slowly to the brink of the ledge, and he saw his family enjoying on the big plateau midway down the opposite cliff. He could see his brothers and sister lying on the plateau, dozing. His father was preening his feathers, and his mother was staring at a piece of fish. And at the same time, she was looking at him. He pleaded his mother to give him some food. His mother looked at him, but the next moment, she picked up a piece of fish and flew towards him. However, when she was just opposite to him, she halted, her wings motionless. The piece of fish was in her beak. The young seagull waited for a moment, but then he could not bear it any longer. His wings and flew. He cried with joy and started flying higher and higher. His parents, brothers, and sister flew around him. They were all happy. After a while, the seagull's parents, brothers, and sister landed on the sea. They beckoned him to come there. He tried to stand on the sea, but his legs sank into it and he was frightened. But his belly touched the water and he did not drown. He began to float on the sea. His family members praised him and gave him pieces of fish to eat. The seagull had finally made his first flight. So we get a message from the story that to progress in life, we have to overcome our fears, and one should trust one's abilities because the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. The title of the chapter is 2 stories about flying. We've already done the first part in the previous video, and in this video I'm taking the second part of the story, and the title of the second part is Black Aeroplane. This story has been written by Frederick Forsyth. It recounts the experience of a pilot whose plane is caught in a storm. So what happens when his plane is caught in a storm? The author was flying his old Dakota plane over France back to England. It was 1:30 in the morning. The moon was rising in the east behind him, and the stars were shining in the clear sky. He was happy and was looking forward to being with his family. He called Paris Control and told them that he was on his way to England. The control room advised him to turn 12 degrees west. He checked the map and the compass, switched over to his second and last fuel tank, and turned the Dakota accordingly towards England. He thought that he would reach England by breakfast time. Paris was about 150 kilometers behind him. Suddenly, he saw a black stormy cloud. They were huge. They looked like black mountains standing in front of him across the sky. He knew that he could not fly up and over them. He also knew that he did not have enough fuel to fly around them to the north or south. He thought that he should go back to Paris. But then he decided to take the risk because he did not want to miss his breakfast. He flew his old Dakota straight into the storm. It was dark outside the airplane. The old airplane jumped and twisted in the air. Its compass and radio went dead. He called Paris Control, but in vain. He could not see where he was. He was lost in the storm. Then, out of nowhere, he saw another aeroplane near him in the black clouds. It had no lights on its wings, so he could see the pilot's face, who turned to him. He lifted one hand and waved. He motioned the author to follow him. He was trying to help the author. The author followed the strange black airplane. They flew half an hour in the clouds. Then the strange airplane started to go down and the author followed him. Suddenly, the author came out of the clouds. He saw two long straight lines of lights in front of him. It was a runway. An airport? He was safe? The author turned to look back at his friend in the black airplane, but there was no other airplane in the sky. The black airplane had gone. The author landed. He walked away from the old Dakota near the control tower. He went and asked the woman in the control center about the other airplane. He wanted to thank him. She looked at him very strangely and then laughed and said, "Another airplane? Up there in the storm? No other airplanes were flying tonight. Yours was the only one I could see on the radar." The author had a number of unanswered questions. But then he was safe. The story ends with creating a suspense in the minds of the readers about the identity of the pilot of the strange black airplane. The author wants to convey the message that the manifestation of human mind can be quite powerful and can guide us through troubled times, just like he was guided by a black airplane. Today I've taken up the 4th chapter of the First Flight book from the diary of Anne Frank, and this has been written by Anne Frank herself. This chapter is an excerpt from the personal diary of a 13-year-old Jewish girl who witnessed the horrors of the Nazi rule at the time of World War II. So now I'll explain the poem in a very simple language. Anne Frank considers diary writing to be a strange experience. She gives 2 reasons for this. Firstly, she has never written anything earlier, and secondly, she thinks that neither she nor anyone else would be interested in the thoughts of a teenager. However, she feels an inner compulsion to write, so she decides to pen down her thoughts. One day, when Anne was feeling unhappy and depressed, she recalled the saying that paper has more patience than people. She continued to brood about this thought and concluded that it was indeed right. She decided that she would not let anyone other than a true friend read what she would write in the stiff-backed notebook, her diary. The reason which prompted her to write a diary is that she does not have any friend. Anne says that she might have seemingly friendly people around her, but a true close friend is missing. She can talk about ordinary things to these people, but she cannot share the intimate secrets with any one of them. She considers her diary to be her imaginary, long-awaited friend and names it Kitty. So she gives a brief sketch of her family in the beginning and writes that her father is an adorable man and had married her mother when he was 36 and she was 25. Her elder sister Margot was born in Frankfurt, Germany in 1926, and she herself was born on 12th June 1929. She lived in Frankfurt until the age of 4, and in September 1933, her father emigrated to Holland accompanied by her mother. Meanwhile, Anne and her sister were sent to Aachen to live with their grandmother. Anne's grandmother fell ill in the summer of 1941 and had to be operated upon. So Anne had a simple birthday celebration that year. Sadly, her grandmother died in January 1942. And next writes about June 20, 1942, an account of her classroom experiences. She writes in her diary that her entire class was terrified and nervous because the school teachers were going to have a meeting to discuss the annual results. Here, Anne records her observation that her class had quite a few dumb students and nearly a quarter of the class needed to be kept back. She also observes that the teachers are the most unpredictable creatures, so the results could not be guessed. Anne was not worried about herself and her girlfriends. She was sure that they would all make it to the next grade. Although she was a bit doubtful about mathematics, they all waited patiently and tried to encourage and cheer up each other. Anne was quite friendly with all her teachers except the old fogey, Mr. Keesing, her mathematics teacher, who always remained angry with her because of her talkative nature. He warned her constantly to give up this habit. When all his warnings failed, he punished her by assigning extra homework. Anne was asked to write an essay on a chatterbox. She did not know what to write but noted down the topic and tucked it in her bag. After that, she tried to remain quiet in the class. In the evening, after finishing her routine homework, she thought about the topic chatterbox. She decided to write convincing arguments for being a chatterbox. In her 3-page assignment, she wrote that talking is natural to all students. Talking becomes more compulsive for her as her mother is a habitual talker and one cannot do much about inherited traits. Mr. Keesing, her teacher, had a good laugh at her arguments and Anne resumed talking through the next class. The teacher then gave her another assignment as punishment, an incorrigible chatterbox. Anne handed over this assignment and things remained fine for the next 2 lessons. However, during the 3rd lesson, Mr. Keesing lost patience and told her to write an essay entitled "Quack, Quack, Quack," said Mistress Chatterbox. This made everyone, including Anne, laugh. However, she felt that she had already written enough about the topic, so she must write something new now. Sain, one of her friends who was good at writing poetry, offered to write the entire essay in verse. The poem turned out to be a beautiful one. It was about a mother duck and a father swan with 3 baby ducklings who quacked and quacked and quacked. This angered the father swan and he bit the ducklings to death. He was amused to read the poem and took the joke sportingly. He read it to the entire class and several other classes, adding his own comments. From then on, Anne was never given assignment as punishment and was also allowed to talk in the class. Mr. Keesing, too, was a changed man and always cracked jokes. And this time I'm here with the chapter Glimpses of India taken from the first flight book of class 10th. This chapter has 3 parts, so in this video I'll be giving you the brief summary of part 1, that is A Baker from Goa. This chapter has been written by Lucio Rodriguez. It's a pen portrait of a traditional Goan village baker and his position in society. The elders fondly remember the good old Portuguese and their famous loaves of bread. The Portuguese have now left, but some bakers have stayed back. They still use the traditional furnaces and molds to bake bread and cakes. The writer remembers his childhood. The baker, who used to be their friend, companion and guide, would come twice a day carrying the traditional business on a bamboo stick. He started his sale in the morning, and on his return he would have had sold everything in the basket. He first delivered the bread to the servants. Then the children of the house would crowd around his basket to choose the bread bangles. or the specially made sweet bread. Without brushing their teeth, they would eat the bread bangles and drink hot tea. A baker had an important place in the village life. Marriage gifts were meaningless without bowl or sweet bread sandwich. Cakes and bolanas were a must for Christmas and other festivals. In old days, the bakers used to wear a peculiar dress referred to as kabai. It was a single-piece long frock reaching down the knees. Later, they started wearing a shirt and trousers which were shorter than full-length ones and longer than half pants. Someone in the baker's family still carries on the business and the tradition. These bakers are known as pedder in Goa even today. The baker usually collected his bills at the end of the month and used to write the account on walls with pencils. The baker used to be prosperous. They, their families and servants never starved. Their plump physique was a testimony of their prosperity and good income. So the message that we get from this chapter is that we should never forget our roots. Remembering about old times recharges us. Our childhood memories stay with us all through our life. Hello students, I'm back with the summary of part 2 of the chapter Glimpses of India. The title of this part is Coorg. So in this particular part, which has been written by Lokesh Abrol, it beautifully describes Coorg and its inhabitants. Coorg is situated midway between Mysore, which is now also known as Mysuru, and the coastal town of Bangalore, which is now Mangaluru, in Karnataka state. It's a heaven on earth. It's a beautiful region of rolling hills, martial men, beautiful women, and wild creatures. Coorg is famous for coffee plantations, evergreen rainforests, and spices. Evergreen forests cover 30% of its land. It rains heavily during monsoons. The best period for visit is from September to March, when the weather is perfect. The fiercely independent people of Coorg are possibly the descendants of Greek or Arabs. Story goes that a part of Alexander's army settled in Coorg when their return became impractical. They married among the locals. Their martial traditions, marriage and religious rites are different from Hindu mainstream. They also wear a waist belt, which is referred to as kopia, over long black coat. This belt is similar to the kufiya worn by Arabs and Kurds. They are very hospitable and entertain their guests with stories of bravery and courage of their sons and fathers. Coorg regiment is the most decorated in the Indian Army. The first chief of the Indian Army, General Kariyappa, was a Coorgi. The Kodavus are the only people in India permitted to carry firearms without a license. Waters from forests and hills feed River Kaveri. Many animals enjoy in its water. It also provides adventurous sports like rafting, canoeing, and rappelling. Other adventure sports like rock climbing, mountain biking, and trekking are also there. Brahmagiri hills, when climbed, gives a panoramic view of the entire Coorg. India's largest Tibetan settlement is also near Coorg in Bailakupi. Here I would begin with the summary of the chapter Tea from Assam. Tea from Assam is a travelogue written by Arup Kumar Datta, and Arup Kumar Datta in this travelogue talks about two boys, Pranjol and Rajveer. Both are good friends, both are classmates, and Pranjol happens to reside in Assam. So this time during the summer vacation, Rajveer is accompanying Pranjol to his place. While both the boys are travelling in the train, they happen to come across a station wherein they purchase tea, and while savouring the tea, they talk amongst each other, and Rajveer tells Pranjol that all around the world, 80 crore people happen to consume tea every day. While they are moving, the beautiful scenery outside happens to mesmerize Rajveer because he has never seen such beautiful scenario. He can see the mountains which are covered with forest, and in front of those mountains there are vast expanses of lush green tea bushes. He is very elated to see them. At the same time, Pranjal is not at all excited because this is a normal sight for him. He has been to this place n number of times, and Rajveer is very excited, and he shares with Pranjal legends which are linked with the origin of tea. Rajveer narrates to Pranjal a few legends which are associated with the origin of the tea. He narrates one of the story wherein the Chinese emperor who used to drink boiled water coincidentally happened to drink a flavored water wherein the leaves by chance fell into the boiling water. The moment the leaves fell into that boiling water, the flavor and the color of the water changed, and the emperor really liked it. So he named it as tea. Rajveer also narrates one of the Indian legend which is associated with the origin of tea. He told Pranjal about a saint who was Bodhidharma, and the saint was unable to meditate because he would fall off to sleep. Because he didn't want to go off sleep, he decided to cut off his eyelids. The place where his eyelids fell, 10 tea plants grew out of them. The people happened to boil those leaves and saw that if a person drinks that boiling water, he or she would be able to stay awake for a longer duration. Rajveer also told Pranjal about the first time tea was consumed in China at around 2700 BC. The words chini, chai are all from the origin of China. By 16th century, tea was introduced to Europeans, and here the Europeans used it more as a medicine rather than a beverage. Soon the train reaches the Mariani junction. Both the boys collect their baggages and get down on the train where Pranjal's parents are there to receive them. Pranjal's father drives them through Dekhyabari. Dekhyabari is the tea estate that has been managed by Pranjal's father. Rajveer inquires from Mr. Barwa, that is Pranjal's father, that is it the second flush or the sprouting season that begins from May to July, and this is the time of the year when tea is best yielded. Pranjal's father is very impressed by the knowledge that Rajveer has, and he appreciates Rajveer about his knowledge. Rajveer is also happy, and he says that he would love to know more about tea while he stays with Pranjal's family. We also got to know a lot about tea.
Today I am here with the summary of the chapter Mijbil the Otter. What do you understand by the title Mijbil the Otter? Mijbil is the name of the pet otter. Otter is a mammal, and this otter is the pet of the author. The name of the author is Gavin Maxwell. Maxwell traveled to southern Iraq early in 1956. He had recently lost his dear dog, Johnny, and he was too sad to keep another dog as a pet. At this time, he thought about experimenting to keep an otter as a pet. Maxwell used to live in Camospierna, which was close to water and appeared to be a suitable place for keeping this sea animal. He mentioned this idea to one of his friends who had accompanied him to Iraq. The friend advised Maxwell to find an otter from the Tigris marshes, a place that had countless otters often tamed by Arabs. Maxwell and his friends were on the way to Basra to the Consulate General to collect and answer their mails from Europe. It so happened that his friend's mail had arrived, but Maxwell had to wait for his mail for another 5 days. Meanwhile, his friend left, and when Maxwell returned with his mail to his room, he found 2 Arabs waiting for him. They handed him a note from his friend which said, "Here is your otter." The otter was in a sack. On opening it, Maxwell saw the animal, which appeared to him like a very small, medievally conceived dragon. It was thoroughly mud-smeared, and Maxwell took a month to remove all the traces of mud from its chocolate-colored coat. Maxwell named the otter Mijbil. Midge remained aloof during the first 24 hours. He slept on the floor as far as possible from Maxwell. However, he soon became quite friendly, and the very next day hopped into Maxwell's bed and slept in the crook of his knees. Maxwell then made a body belt for him and led him to the bathroom. The sight of water brought immense joy to Mijbil. He rolled and plunged in the bathtub, creating quite a commotion. By observing Mijbil's behavior in water, Maxwell learned that playing with water is a characteristic of otters. They love to splash it around and cannot resist the sight of it. 2 days after Midge's first visit to the bathroom, Maxwell was surprised to see that he had not only managed to get into the bathroom but had also turned the tap on with its own paws. Soon Midge learned to follow his master without a lead and started responding to his name. Mijbil enjoyed playing with the rubber ball, dribbling it all over the room and throwing it up powerfully to a great distance. At times he would lie on his back and roll 2 or 3 marbles on his belly without letting them fall off his body. Then it was time to leave Basra. Maxwell was worried about transporting his pet otter to England since the British airline to London did not fly animals. So he had to book a flight via France, and even this flight required the otter to be flown in an 18 by 18 inches box to be placed on the floor at the passenger's feet. Maxwell got this box ready and put Midge into it an hour before leaving for the airport to familiarize him with the closed surrounding. Then he left to have a quick meal. However, on his return, he was shocked to see that the otter had badly ripped the inner lining of the box and had injured himself in a bid to wriggle out. It took Max a long time to remove the shredded linings of the box. He then put Midge back into the box and made the driver of the car rush to the airport at a bullet speed because he was getting late. He was left with barely 10 minutes to cover the distance of 5 miles to the airport. On reaching there, he found the aircraft waiting to take off. The angry officials rushed Maxwell through. However, Maxwell felt lucky as he had been booked a seat at the extreme front. He covered the floor around his feet with newspapers and shared his worries about Midge with an air hostess. She suggested to try carrying the pet on his knee. Max was overwhelmed at this suggestion, but little did he know that an otter out of the box could be difficult to manage. As soon as Max opened the box, Midge dashed towards the seated passengers and created an awful confusion and panic in the aircraft. It wasn't easy to get him back to his place, but fortunately he soon returned on his own and snuggled up to Max. Mijbil lived with Maxwell in his flat in London for nearly a month. The pet otter would keep himself busy and entertained with different toys like ping pong balls, marbles, rubber fruit, and a terrapin shell. He would invent his own games that would keep him occupied for up to half an hour at a time. Maxwell exercised Mijbil on a lead like a dog. Another thing that Maxwell learned was that an average Londoner is unfamiliar with otters. He was really amused at the wild guesses people in the streets made about Mijbil's species. Some thought it to be a baby seal, while others thought it to be a squirrel. Still others proposed that it was a beaver, a walrus, a bear cub, a leopard, or even a hippopotamus. The most surprising was when a laborer digging a hole in the street laid down his tool, stared at the other, and inquired from Maxwell, "What is that supposed to be?"
Dear students, in today's video, I have taken up the chapter Madam Rides the Bus from the First Flight book of class 10th. The story is about the first bus journey of an 8-year-old girl. The name of this girl is Walia Mai. She's also known as Wali for short. She was a curious girl who wanted to know many things. She did not have playmates of her own age, and her favorite pastime was standing in the front doorway of her house to see what was happening outside. The most exciting experience for her was the early appearance of a bus that shuttled between her village and the nearest town. She developed a desire for riding the bus. This wish became stronger and developed into an overwhelming desire. Whenever the bus passed her house, she looked longingly at the passengers and dreamt of having a bus ride as soon as possible. For months, she listened to the conversation between her neighbors and other people who frequently undertook the bus journey. She used to put various questions to them about their experiences and thus gathered sufficient information about how to ride a bus. She learned about the approximate distance between the town and her village, the time that the journey between the village and the town would take, and the amount charged for one-way fare. She also came to know that if she took the 1 o'clock bus and returned without alighting, she could be back home by about 2:45. So she made detailed calculation and plans to fulfill her desire to ride a bus. One fine spring day, Vali sneaked out of the house without her mother's knowledge and boarded the bus. The conductor volunteered to help her get into the bus, but a confident Vali declined the offer. She showed him the bus fare that she was carrying and got into the bus. The conductor was amused by her action and manner of conversation. He jokingly called her madam. Everybody was looking at her, so Vali felt shy and hurriedly walked to a vacant seat. Vali looked curiously at everything. She observed everything minutely. Vali enjoyed the sight of the trees and fields passing by the bus, but what interested her the most was a cow running in the middle of the road in front of the bus. At last, the cow moved off the road and soon the bus reached the town. Vali was thrilled to see the bright-looking shops laden with a lot of merchandise. All this made the little girl very happy. Amidst all this excitement, the bus came to a standstill and all except Vali got off. When the conductor asked her why she was not getting down the bus, she told him that she would not alight but go back to her village by the same bus. She took out another 30 paise from her pocket to pay the fare for her return journey. There weren't many passengers in the bus during the return journey as well. The conductor asked if her mother would worry about her and look for her when he gave her the return ticket. A defiant Vali responded that no one would be looking for her. Vali enjoyed her return journey, looking at the same sight that had amused her a great deal while riding to the town. However, she received a real shock when she saw that the cow that had run ahead of the bus during her onward journey was lying dead by the roadside. Sadness overcame her. The sight of the dead cow that had looked so lovable and beautiful just a little while ago left her shocked. This sad incident haunted her and dampened her excitement. She no longer wanted to look out of the window and remained stuck to her seat till the bus reached her village at 3:40. After a brief chit-chat with the conductor, Vali got down the bus. When Vali reached home, she found her mother was awake. She was talking to her aunt who lived in South Street. She was a chatterbox. She asked Vali where she had been, but Vali just smiled. Her mother and the aunt were discussing the things outside the world. Her mother said that no one could know everything. At this, Vali remarked that there were many things happening without our knowledge. Her mother asked what she meant. Vali's aunt called her a chit of a girl. She took interest in things which did not concern her. She behaved as if she was a grown up lady. Bali smiled to herself. She didn't want them to understand her smile. This story definitely gives us a message. Amongst all the light-hearted situations, the story gives us the serious and philosophical message about the mystery of life and death. It tells that the life is beautiful while death is horrifying. However, the story makes it clear that life never comes to a standstill. It goes on and on, endlessly and rhythmically. Today I am here with the summary of the chapter The Sermon at Benares. The chapter talks about Gautam Buddha, who was born in 563 BC. He was born in a royal family and was a prince. His name was Siddhartha Gautam. At the age of 12, he was sent away for schooling. He studied all the sacred Hindu scriptures. He returned after 4 years, and at the age of 16, he married a princess. They had a son. For 10 years, the couple led a happy life. Siddhartha had been shielded from the sufferings of the world. However, when he was 25, Siddhartha saw a sick man, then an aged man, then a funeral procession. Finally, he came across a monk begging for alms. This was his first encounter with the harsh realities of life. These sights made him so sad that he decided to renounce the worldly pleasures. He left his family and became a beggar. He went out into the world to seek spiritual knowledge. Siddhartha Gautama wandered for 7 years in search of wisdom and truth. Finally, he sat down under a fig tree to meditate. He vowed to stay there until he got enlightenment. After 7 days, Gautama got enlightenment. He named the tree as the Bodhi tree, that is, the tree of wisdom. He became known as the Buddha, which means enlightened or the awakened. He began to teach and spread his message of wisdom and truth. He became known as the Buddha. Buddha gave his first sermon at Benares. It is one of the holiest places on the banks of the river Ganges. Here, the Buddha tells about the presence of death, which is inevitable and can't be escaped. A lady named Kisa Gautami had an only son. One day, her son died. She wanted that her child should become alive again. She wanted some medicine to bring her son back to life. People called her mad. At last, she came across a man who advised her to meet the Buddha. She approached Buddha with a request to give her medicine so that her only son could live again. After deep thought, the Buddha asked her to bring a handful of mustard seeds. But there was a condition. She must bring it from a house where no one had died. Kisa Gautami went from door to door to get the mustard seeds. She found mustard seeds in every home, but she could not find a home where nobody had died. By evening, she was sad and tired. She saw the lights of the city. Soon there was the darkness of the night. Now she considered the fate of men. She realized that death is inevitable. No one can escape it. She came back to the Buddha and asked for his blessings. The Buddha, in his sermon, told her that our life is brief and painful. Everyone who takes birth has to die. The vessel made by the potter is not permanent. It has to break one day. In the same way, everyone has to die. Death spares no one. Everyone grieves when someone dear dies. But grieving cannot bring the dead back to life. So death and sufferings are unavoidable. The wise people do not grieve as they know the truth. Weeping does not bring peace to the mind. On the other hand, a person's pain becomes greater by grieving. His body also suffers. One who has learned to control his grief shall have peace of mind. That person is blessed who has overcome his sorrows. Today I have taken up the play The Proposal. This play has been written by Anton Chekhov. This is a play which has been taken from First Flight Book of NCERT Class 10. Anton Chekhov is considered to be among the greatest writers of short stories in history. He was born on January 29th in the year 1890 in southern Russia. He was a Russian physician, playwright and author.
So, this play, The Proposal, will take us to Russia of the 19th century, and we'll get to know the lifestyles of Russian landlords and the farm laborers who worked on their farms. Since all the work was done by the laborers, these landlords led a very luxurious but lazy life. And as they had nothing much to do, they would quarrel on small little senseless things. We'll also get to know about the social life of these landowners. If there was an unmarried woman in the family, she would be considered as a great burden on the family. And at the same time, an aged bachelor was also looked down upon in the society. Now, let me introduce the characters to you. The first character is Stepanovich Shubukov. So, he is a landowner. Then we have Natalia Stepanovich. She is a 25-year-old girl, and she's the daughter of Shubukov. Then we have Ivan Vasilovich Lomov. He is a neighbor of Shubukov. He is hearty by nature, but at the same time, he is a suspicious landowner. The play The Proposal was initially titled as a marriage proposal. It is a one-act play and a farce. Farce is a comedy which has a lot of intelligence involved. So this play was written in 1888 to 89 by Anton Chekhov. So at the beginning of the play, Shubukov is sitting in his drawing room, and Lomov, who is a wealthy neighbor of Shubukov, arrives. He is wearing a dress jacket and white gloves. Shubukov welcomes him, and he wonders why Lomov is so formally dressed. Lomov says that he has come to trouble Shubukov with a request, and Shubukov becomes cautious. He feels that Lomov has come to borrow money. So he is not at all in any mood to help Lomov. Lomov is excited and he fails to come to the point. He keeps on talking about things here and there, but he is not able to come up to the point. Shubukov asks him not to beat about the bush. He should come to the point. Lomov at last tells him that he has come with a purpose, and he tells that he has come to ask the hand of Shubukov's daughter, Natalia. Shubukov is highly elated. He embraces and kisses Lomov. He tells that it has been a very long desire and he wanted to see Lomov and Natalia married together. Shubukov assures Lomov that Natalia too will give her consent because she is in love and she is like a lovesick cat. So with this I come to the end of the part where Lomov is putting forth his proposal in front of Shubukov. Shubukov leaves Lomov and has gone to fetch his daughter. So in the next part, let's see what happens when Natalia meets Lomov. I'm here with the second part of the play, The Proposal, that has been taken from the first flight book of CBSE class 10th. In the first part, I explained how Lomov puts forth his proposal in front of Shubukov that he wants to marry his daughter Natalia. Now in this part, we'll see what happens when Natalia meets Lomov. Shubukov goes inside to send Natalia. Lomov is left alone in the room. His body is trembling with excitement and he thinks about his present life. He wants to settle the question of his marriage at once. He starts thinking now he should not delay. He thinks about Natalia. She's a skilled housekeeper. She's educated and is not bad to look at. At this age, he should not expect a better girl than her. Now, he is 35 years old and he should lead a regulated life. He is suffering from serious diseases like palpitation, excitement, and insomnia. Because of these reasons, he should marry. Just then, Natalia comes in. Her father has not told her that Lomov has come to meet her. He only tells her that a customer had come. So when she comes and sees Lomov, she welcomes him, and before Lomov can speak anything, she starts speaking. When she mentions his beautiful dress, Lomov is excited again. Before he can talk about his marriage to her, he starts trembling. Natalia encourages him and he recovers again. He says that he will tell her everything in brief.
Even then, he is not able to talk in a straightforward manner, and he starts beating about the bush. He tells her that for the last many decades, their families have had good relations. Their estates are also adjoining. His oxen meadows touch their birch woods. Natalia protests against him and says that the oxen meadows belong to her. They start quarreling about the ownership of the oxen meadows, and they shout loudly at each other, and they do not calm down in any way. Shubukov comes in and finds them both quarreling. He is greatly surprised, but when he finds that they are quarreling about the ownership of the oxen meadow, he also becomes angry. And instead of calming them down, he also starts quarreling. He claims to be the owner of the meadows. He insults not only Lomov but also his family members. Lomov becomes more excited. He uses insulting words for Shubukov, Natalia, and their family members. Lomov's palpitation increases and he becomes very perturbed. He goes out of the room. Shubukov says how the foolish Lomov dared to bring a proposal for Natalia's marriage. When Natalia hears this, she is deeply shocked and she almost becomes unconscious. She starts weeping and asks her father to bring Lomov back. Shubukov feels sad. He says that it is the biggest misfortune to be the father of a girl. He goes out to call Lomov. Now, at this moment, Lomov again enters the room. Natalia thinks that she will not annoy him this time. She tries to please him. She says that the meadows belong to him. She tries to change the topic so that he could propose to her. But he's still not alright. He is feeling disturbed and he does not come to the point. Lomov starts praising the qualities of his dog Guess, which he has purchased for 125 rubles. But Natalia says that her dog Squeezer, which she had purchased for 85 rubles, is much better than Lomov's dog Guess. Both of them praise the qualities of their dog, and now again they start quarreling on this topic. They again start shouting at each other, and in the meantime, Shubukov comes again, and instead of putting an end to their quarrel, he also starts quarreling. In this dispute, Lomov's condition deteriorates and he falls on the chair unconscious. Both the father and the daughter think that he has died. Natalia starts lamenting that her chance of getting married has gone. After some time, Lomov comes to his senses and Shubukov tells Lomov that Natalia is willing for marriage, so he should marry her. Natalia expresses her willingness. Shubukov does not want to lose even a moment and joins their hands. He asks them to kiss each other, but soon they start quarreling again and they start debating over the qualities of their respective dogs. Shubukov tries to calm them down, but the quarreling continues. And amidst this quarreling, the play comes to an end. That was all for today, dear students. Stay tuned because there are many more videos that are going to be beneficial for you during the exams. Wish you all the very best for the forthcoming exams.